another episode of Scary Stories with Kalila. I am Kalila Smith, and tonight I have a very special guest. One of the questions I get asked more than anything from people coming to take a tour, or if they even getting a reading or in paranormal investigations, they always ask, what is the place in New Orleans that really scared you? And tonight we're going to talk about that place. So I want to welcome my guest, Rocky Digati, who's a very good friend of mine and fellow paranormal investigator from, well, at the time she was living in Rhode Island, her home state, and now she is in the wonderful state of New Jersey. Welcome, Raquel. Rocky, great
Hey,
to see
hey,
you.
how
Long
are
time no
you?
see.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. This is a lot of fun. Rocky's been on a lot of investigations with me, and she went to this one place in particular. It was called at the time the State Palace Theater, and the building was originally built in the 1930s. It was the original MGM theater in New Orleans. It's a very extravagant, beautiful building. Unfortunately, it no longer exists. After Katrina, it got flooded, it got boarded
Uh,
up, and really stayed vacant for about 12 years. And then one day just burned up. I don't know if a homeless person was in there and started a fire, or maybe there was some other electrical problem in there, but the building basically burned to the ground over the last several years. But back in its heyday, it was a huge theater here, a very cool place that was built in the 1930s. But by the 1980s and 90s, it became a place that was used for raves. People used to have raves there. That was the big thing back then. That was the rave, And these were big parties that these kids would go to. And unfortunately, there was a lot of drugs in the State Palace Theater, and that's actually what shut it down at some point, was all of the drug activity that was in there. A lot of kids OD'd, a lot of people died up in the place. And there was a lot of deaths over the years. So, I mean, Rocky, what was your initial impression of this place the first time you went in there?
well, as you mentioned, I'm originally from Rhode Island, and we're no stranger to classic architecture there and buildings that way. I love old theaters in general. I mean, look at that. Look at that gorgeous theater. It's absolutely cool. The first impression I got was time stood still as you walked into the entryway, because not only is the structure itself very cool, but it had a lot of the original architectural features. Remember when you looked down at the floor, it had that marbly with
Oh, it's
with
beautiful.
the crisscross metal in it and stuff. All of the details were still there. So I thought it was fascinating that when you walked in, it was like going back in time.
Oh, absolutely,
And
absolutely. I mean, it
that's
just,
such a cool era. That's the golden age of Hollywood, prohibition, and there's a lot going on in the time that theater was built, and it really
oh
all
yeah.
just kind of reeks in the atmosphere. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you can feel it. The energy in there is from that era. It even kind of still had that theatery smell to it. I don't know if that makes sense to a lot of people, but that certain smell you have that when you go into a theater, and I'm not talking about the popcorn. I'm just talking about there's a certain smell when you go into these old theaters. I don't know if it's the old film or what it is, but for many years after it was originally a movie theater in the 1930s and 40s, one of the first movie theaters, it became a theater that was used for plays before people started doing, the raves there and everything. And prior to that, of course, it was used as a college. And I'm going to close this little thing out here. Keep having a little pop up coming up. But it was actually a theater where they had plays, they had performances in there. So you still had the stage up there, and you still had the big, beautiful red velvet curtain and everything that you would have, in any kind of a theater that actually had plays in it. So it was extremely decadent and beautiful, and it just had this feel to it. But
As
one
the
of the
old,
things I remember. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, as the old schoolers used to say, at one time it housed the legitimate theater.
Yes, it did. It really
A
did.
legitimate
It
theater.
the real theater. It was a real theater, but then it was also a movie house, for a great while.
What a cool place. Yeah.
Oh, it's a wonderful place. And but I'll never forget, there were five of us here. There was myself, Rocky, and we had three other people helping us out. And actually, it was already shut down when
Yeah.
we got in there. It wasn't even a theater anymore. It had been shut down for quite a long time. And an artist friend of mine was using one of the rooms downstairs. And it's one of the rare places where you actually have somewhat of a basement. It's a little bit below the ground level of this area. It had little offices down there and all, and he was doing artwork, and he was actually an artist who did the artwork for the Anne Rice balls for
Oh, very nice.
Halloween. Yeah, he did a lot of that stuff. And he had invited me there because he and his wife had had a lot of strange experiences there, in some of the areas, and she found it very frightening. And that's how we wound up going there. But I'll never forget one of the strangest things, and this really still stays. The feeling that I had still stays with me. There was at some point I had put things up on the stage itself. I put one of our bags up on the stage, and then we started wandering around and kind of getting the initial tour with him. And then at some point I was like, oh, I need to go back and get that bag. And I went into the main theater area, and you guys were still out in the entryway. And when I walked down into that area, and I was up at the stage, my back was to where all the seating was and where the balconies were. And I just kind of had that chill you get when you feel like you're not alone. And I felt like there were a thousand eyes on me. And I was like, some people are in here. Somebody's in here. And I can feel them all staring at me. And it was so bizarre because, and this is one of these things that we did not get a picture of, because when I turned around and I looked, because I felt like so many people were looking at me, and I turned around and I looked up in that top balcony, there were seats up there. It looked like there were rows of seats up there, and it looked like people sitting there. There was this, I'll call it an illusion. It gave the illusion that there were actually people sitting in the seats, and I was just like, whoa, this is really bizarre. And then I came out and I told all of them, and I'm like, oh gosh, y'all gotta experience this. This is bizarre. And do you remember that? Do you remember coming
I
in
do.
there?
I absolutely do. After what I can call a monumental feat of agonizing data recovery, I was able to retrieve pictures from, this was in December of 2003. So I actually still had the hard copy floppy disk. And uh, hopefully we can put up a picture um, for the balcony. There there are a couple of pictures I recovered of the balcony, and if you look, the balcony has some really clear cut orbs in it.
Yeah, the
And
balcony is very, very strange, but there was actually a row, and maybe it wasn't the balcony. It was actually rows above the balcony. There was like this. I don't know.
that's a
Do you call that?
mezzanine, maybe, perhaps.
Is it the orchestra? I don't know what you would call that. There was an area like way up at the top, and we
Well,
went up there, and there were no seats there.
right.
That's where there were no seats. Not only were there no people sitting in the seats, there were no seats. And
I mean,
that's what was so shocking to me, was that no, I saw seats with people sitting in them when I was downstairs. And that's what really creeped me out, because I not only felt that sensation of someone staring at you, but I could see what looked like people up there. And when you get up there, there's not even any seats or
it
no
wasn't
rows or
just,
anything. They had all been removed. So that was the first creep out of that experience, the first of many creep out of that experience. And there was some kind in one of those balconies. There was something, you were drinking something, or do you remember that there was some weird smell, or you started smelling something? Do you remember
yeah,
that?
I do. I do. It was an acrid smell. And it was almost a chemical smell. And it was very, very strange. I mean, it could have been anything from meth chemicals from the rave days to bathtub gin. for all I can tell.
Yeah, I don't remember. You said it was something because I was like, wait, no, you weren't drinking. You smelled something though that didn't make sense to you.
Right, and it was
Because I didn't
this.
smell it. I didn't smell it, but I remember you having that experience.
Yeah, I sure did. And it's got, I think, it's the orchestra, the mezzanine, and the balcony, I think, is the sectors. But it was funny. It actually felt, when you walked out on the stage, you had a minute where you sort of like felt self-conscious, because even if you couldn't see it, you felt like there was a whole audience there. You
You
actually felt
did.
like, the emperor with no clothes when you walked onto the
You did.
stage.
It was bizarre. It was a very, very,
Yeah.
very weird feeling, and I don't remember ever feeling that anywhere else. Like I said, people say, what really scared you? And it was like that place. I will never forget those feelings because I've walked into hundreds, if not thousands, of haunted locations over the years, and so have you. And I've never had that feeling like I had in that place. There was some very uncomfortable places. For instance, you have a photograph of what looks like what I called the Freddy Krueger boiler room, because there was actually a place that went under where that somewhat of a basement was. And
Well, yeah, it was.
I remember the guy going, "Do y'all want to go in there?" And I was like, he opened the door, and I guess that's when you took the picture, and I was like, "No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go in
Well,
there."
actually, I was able to recover that picture as well, and it's actually, for you theater geeks, it's under the proscenium wing of the stage, and it's basically, it's, for electrical access in the later years. Electrical access. It's a It's almost like a crawl space for utility reasons. And in the picture that I had, you can see that there is very clearly an orb on the pipes, and it was just kind of creepy anyway. I mean, it's not the kind of place you want to like stick your head in there, because when you see the pictures, it appears, because we all had, props to everyone, really high powered flashlights. There was no electricity.
Yeah.
This is all without electricity.
Yeah, we had no electricity in there. It was pretty
No.
bizarre. Some of the things that we captured in there were very bizarre. One of the things that we kept seeing in this particular building, and she has a photograph of one, and I even managed to get a little bit of a video clip. You hear about shadow people. There's this, you know, supposedly one of the different types of hauntings is the shadow person. And what's interesting is that, I've been doing this forever, and, back in the 70s, 80s, you didn't hear about shadow people. This is something that just started creeping up, right around the late 1990s, early 2000s. People started talking about shadow people. And at the time, and I think a lot of people today still don't know what they are. I mean, at the time, they were like, they don't talk, they don't do anything, they're there, they move, but they seem to be more afraid of you than you are afraid of them, and nobody could really define what they are. Now, since then, I do want to say, since then, over the years, I have a theory of what they are, simply because as I've deepened my work in mediumship and working with spirits on different levels of existence, and especially since I had people very, very close to me pass, and I had them in the very early stages, like the day after they die, or the actual day they die, appear as shadows. And at
Sort of the
that point in
quintessential
time,
lost soul.
what's that?
The quintessential lost soul.
Well, not necessarily, because these are people I knew. I mean, these people are very close to me, so they were not really lost. But it's almost like in that transitionary, because there's a few days there where the spirit doesn't really cross over. They kind of go around and they appear as the crisis apparition, where they say their goodbyes to people and they let people know that they're still existing, and you get these experiences with them. And my co-host on the other show, the Afterlife Mysteries, we have talked about this at a great length about these shadow things, and we've come to the conclusion that perhaps our theory is that these shadows are newly crossed over spirits who have not fully gone through and then able to kind of go back and forth, they're very limited on what they can do. So they show up, but they haven't really learned how to manifest themselves to show themselves to us.
A transitioning soul, someone who's in
Right,
transition.
exactly, exactly. And that being said, I mean, I'm not as afraid of them as I was in 2003, because in 2003 when I saw them, it was just like, whoa. I was not, this thing is there, and I'm not expecting to see that. And it's actually kind of a funny story. It's a little funny story about how I happened upon that first one. Now, the one by the piano, I don't recall seeing that at that time.
I don't either, actually.
Well, he was probably just staring at it. He's probably just hiding from us. But that
I
one, there
bring
was one in a
music.
closet. There was some point where we opened the door to a costume closet.
Mm.
It was very cluttered, and there were clothes in there hanging and so forth. And I had a person kneeling on the floor with one of the night shot cameras, and then I had someone standing. I think it was Scott that was standing, and they're like, "Whoa, ooh, what's that? What's that?" And I came and I kind of peeked around. And they're like, "Do you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, I see it." And they said, "What is it?" I said, "I don't know." And I told Scott, who was standing, and I said, "Get in there and get a closer look." And he says, "You get in there and get a closer look." And I'm like, "I don't have the camera." And just within that split second, he slapped that camera in my hand and he pushed me into the room and shut the door. And the only light I had was what little bit of light illuminated off of that old Sony night shot green screen that would show up. And that's the only thing illuminated. And all I remember seeing was something across the back. There was like a rack of clothing there, and something just kind of went right across the screen. And in that instant, I got this chill at my back, and it was like, I don't know what that was, but whatever it is, it moved, and now I can't see it, and I don't know where it's going. And I think if something would have touched me in that moment, in that room, I would have. I would have freaked out. And again, I am not somebody that ever gets freaked out on these things. I never ever, because it's all energy. So it's kind of like, I mean, for you and me, it's kind of ruined for us because it's like we know it's energy. We know it's energy. Yeah, it's not going to do anything. It's
Yeah.
just energy. But in that moment, I was scared. It freaked me out, and I just wanted to get out of that room. And all I could think of was, if something touches me, I'm going to probably drop dead at this point.
Is that one of them? Oh, Lord, that smells good.
Yeah, doesn't
What
it?
the fuck is that?
We need
down,
that
go down,
for
go down.
new potpourri sets.
Look at that. Look like someone's standing there. Go back up.
I know that's what I'm saying
Yeah,
right there. Look. I have no more teeth.
Go in there.
You
Oh,
go.
I can't do it. Baby, I don't have the camera.
Who's on point?
I'll go in.
I'll go, but I need the camera. I can't do it if I don't see
Yeah,
it.
you want the camera? Go on point.
Here, yeah, I'll go. Here. Scott, take the scope. Here.
I get you back.
Storeroom?
Old seats. I can see all the way in. Bathroom?
Yeah, it's storage room.
It's old seats, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, yeah.
Musty as hell.
Yes, it is. Hope I can close it easily.
Scott, do you know what that looked like?
I know what it looked like. Didn't it?
Huh?
Did it look like a woman standing there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but did you ever see Session 9?
Yes.
You remember that?
One of the things that I found so fascinating about that feeling is difficult to describe, and for you kids at home, the hardest thing is to describe how that feels because it's so peculiar. But it's sort of like that feeling where you jump off a cliff because you get that like sink in your stomach. maybe it's different for everybody, but I get that like sort of sink in yourself, and it's just a very peculiar feeling, and you always feel like it's like the floor feels spongy. Everything suddenly feels surreal.
See, I've never jumped off a cliff, so right there when you said that, I'm like, now how many cliffs have you jumped off of exactly?
No cliffs, one high dive.
You mean like a skydive thing?
No, 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 no. I think if they're nice enough to engineer the planes with all those safety measures, I'm going to stay put.
Oh, okay.
But no, I jumped off like a high dive, like Greg Louganis kind of high dive.
Oh, you mean like a
Into,
diving board, like a?
yes,
Oh no, I don't do that either. No, I'm afraid of heights. So
yeah.
no.
So it wasn't cliff diving, but it was a little over 50 feet, I believe. Yeah, I'm not doing that again. I was like
No.
18 and stupid.
Well, okay. So people who have done it, they know what you're talking about. I don't want to know,
You know what
but yeah, it's very surreal when you get to that point where you really are, because it's more than just, oh, I feel like this, or I feel like there's somebody watching me, and then you go, well, there was nobody really there, so maybe it was my imagination.
right.
There was something there, it moved, and now I don't know where it is, and I'm locked in the room with it. So it's a whole it's just like, okay, this really got very, very real, and it's very, very scary because, and I think it's that whole not knowing what it is. I mean, I think at this point my impression of what a shadow person is very, very different, so I'd probably perceive it as a very different kind of experience.
Right. You
But
live
at
and you
that
learn.
time, it was really terrifying
Oh, sure.
because all your mind is just like, oh my God, now is that thing going to touch me? Where is it? Where did it go?
We'd all be so much more relaxed when we were dealing with spirit if we had never seen the movie The Entity. We'd be so much cooler about all of this because now we saw that movie and now we think we're going to be like banged in the bathroom or something horrible, some sort of violent violation is it. You know what you're describing? You're describing the exact thing like when somebody goes and takes a spider out of your house because if you're not one of those people that demands they kill it and get a body count, if you scoop up a spider and you go, oh, and then they go, oops. And the thing is you know it's there, you just don't know where it is. Same queasy feeling.
Yes. Well, for me, it's cockroaches, but yeah, yeah, I know
Fair.
exactly what you're talking about. But yeah,
You're in Louisiana,
that
that'll
was
happen.
just a bizarre feeling, and I wish we could have. My only regret with that particular situation was that we didn't get to go back in a second
Yeah.
time and do a redo, because that's what was kind of hoping what was going to happen was that you guys would come down in a few months or a year, and we get to go back in and do a little more
Yeah.
investigating of the place, with a little bit better equipment. Because I mean, in 2003, we didn't have much equipment at all, you know,
It's
and
funny. I watch the various shows on the channels, and at this point in time, they are plentiful. Um, and I look at the gear and the gewgaws, and I mean EMF meters, temperature. We've all been through that.
yeah, we had that.
And infrared was just starting to kind of be a thing. It wasn't really affordable for the home hobbyist or for the smaller business person. It was something like only like Raytheon had at the time. And it's funny now we've got ghost boxes and there are EMF meters, there are REM pods, there are I saw the coolest thing. If anybody is out there and they're a paranormal investigator, there are a couple of videos on the common bright red internet streaming service that we all go to for instructional videos, and I looked up how to make a portal, the one you see like Jack Osborne using with his ghost spirit box, and it looks like an old ham radio, and it's got all this. And for those of you who are interested in building portals and who might be musicians, it's two effects pedals wired through from an amp. Input on your ghost box, run it through two pedals, wire it up to a small desktop amp. So all my musician friends are like, "Are you serious?" They're like $2,000. That's like $100 worth of stuff. It's out there. And now there's everything. There's these crazy portals. There's these crazy ghost boxes. Before there, we were just running around with cameras and thermometers.
But really, Nowadays, for me to go in and do an investigation, I don't even use the meters. I don't use the EMF meters. I don't use the thermometers. The more I have developed the mediumship, I mean, my body is the thermometer. My body is the
Right.
meter. And I'm not a big fan of the ghost boxes. When I was teaching the paranormal classes, I've experimented with them. I've bought them. Hacked AM radio. You would buy a
Okay.
Radio Shack. I mean, it was like, come on, seriously.
Does Radio Shack still exist?
I don't know what they do now, but
They're not there anymore.
I don't want one of those. But no, I'm just not a big fan of those gadgets, And then, to me, a portal is something that's, we open
Right.
portals all the
Yeah.
time.
And
It's
when I
like,
heard that term,
yeah,
that's
I
what
don't
I
need a
thought
gadget.
too.
Yeah, I don't need a gadget to open a portal. So I'm not a big fan of those things. I'm really not.
What the portal actually does, it does not open a portal, and I don't know why it's termed a portal. But what it does is it makes it sound like it's some great metaphysical thing. What it is it's an audio trick. You have your ghost box, which might be a hacked AM radio type thing that's going to scan and do frequency. You take the the eighth-inch jack out of that, and you plug it into a noise gate pedal. Which, if anybody out there as a sound engineer plays guitar, they're familiar with a noise gate pedal. It's a common item that some guitarists may use in their thing. And then you plug that pedal into another pedal that's a reverb pedal, another very common thing. And then you put the output to that to some small speaker. Now they make these in these kooky, they'll get an old antique radio case, and they'll build all this electronic in there so that you just have to flip switches and stuff. And they'll charge you $2,000 for this crazy thing. So what it does is it doesn't open a portal in the classical sense. What it does is it actually is a cleanup. It's an audio process and cleanup to take that ghost box, clean it up so you're not just listening to that stuff, and everything goes wah wah, and you never like what? Oh, he said Lincoln, he said what? That kind of thing. So
I can't.
So the portal per se is really just running your signal and audio from a ghost box through a noise gate and a reverb pedal into some form of amplification. And believe it or not, it works. It cleans it up a little bit. I've also taken the ghost box and slipped it in an RFID pouch, Faraday pouch.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, I guess I'd rather do things the old-fashioned way, And it's different when you're a medium, though, because, we just kind of tune in directly. So.
I have moments of medium.
Yeah, you probably
my
do.
moments
Yeah.
are more like an extra large, but I have moments of medium, and you're right. I agree. It's really something that is, you can't beat a direct line, and when you're having the direct experience. But maybe it's just the tech whore in me. I just really love the gadgets for fun.
Yeah, see, I'm not a big fan. But then again, not everybody's a medium. I mean, I'll never forget, one of the investigations I actually did in Memphis, and I brought a fellow medium, Sylvia, with me, and she goes into trance. I mean, she goes into trance. She does direct voice, the whole nine yards. And we're watching, we're on this investigation, and she's watching these paranormal investigators play with the little light up balls. You put them on there and they were lighting up and they were talking to them and they would light up. And she says, what are they trying to do? And I said, they're trying to talk to spirit. And she couldn't quite understand why they were doing that. And she goes, tell them they don't need to do that. I mean, I'll just check in and I'll just talk to spirit for them. And I'm like, no, they're not mediums. So I guess if you're not able to just have that kind of experience, you've got to use the equipment. And some people like the documentation of the scientific equipment.
That's I think what appeals to me. I like the tech aspect. I like the idea that and anything techie that works eventually will open up gateways for technology. Like there was a time none of us knew how to use computers, but when they made them simple and they made them more accessible, we all can use them. So for those who don't have mediumship skills, I think that having some of these REM pods and some of these, the other one that kind of like makes me look sideways is the ovulus, and that's the one that generates actual spoken
I
words.
have one of those. Yeah, I have one of
So
those from. I
is it
used one in
fun?
2009 in the television show that we had here, the Haunted New Orleans
My
television
goodness.
show. Paid like $300 for it. And I will say it's just a word bank. It's a word bank and it's going to just
Right.
blurt out stuff. But what's interesting, and I do know that spirit can manipulate energy like that. It's all energy and spirits can affect it. But what's really weird about the oval is that it would say specific things just at the right time.
Well, yeah, that's the idea. Is that
You,
it
you know,
yes,
it
it's a
really
word
did.
bank.
I was in one place where the place had been a funeral home before, and it had never said the word funeral, but when we walked in, it said funeral. And another place was on, happened to be on a street called Religion Street, and it had the old sign, and it was right there by the bathroom. It was almost like a little altar with the old sign and some of the original stuff from the original building, and it had this big old street sign. It said religion, and when I was using the ovilus in there, it said religion, and it was like, okay, how did it do that? So I've been kind of surprised with the ovilus. So I don't dismiss all electronic devices, and they can be fun. They can be fun to play with.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
and
I
I think
still love the old school. There's nothing like a photograph or a video. Having a photograph. I mean, for instance, the photograph of the piano with the shadow person there. You happen
yeah,
to capture that, and I didn't even know you had a photograph
that's
like that.
crazy, isn't it?
The
Yeah.
photograph with where you took a picture, being a musician and someone who plays piano, and she was playing the piano and sitting there playing and singing, and she takes this picture, not trying to get a ghost in the picture, and then what? Years later, you notice that there's a shadow person right there,
Right there.
and none of us saw it.
I
None of
even
us knew
did
he
a
was
photo
there.
where I circled it so you could see it. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
And of course, one of the best pictures, and it's a classic pictures. I've used it in a book. I've used it in, my classes when I'm teaching people. The best picture I think that we ever got was the fabulous photograph of the sconce on the wall. And
The Phantom
this was
Sky.
we were in this lower level hallway, and it was beautiful,
It
beautiful
really was.
old timey, painting. And you had the lovely. Here's a picture of it right here. You've got this gorgeous molding on there. And something compelled me. Now, where you see that handle, that was a staircase going down. And for some reason, I decided to take a picture of this wall, and it was just a blank wall when I took a picture of it. But if you look right in the middle where the two walls meet, you see this impression. It's a very, very light outline, and what it was on the actual film photograph, you can see that it looks like an antiquated light fixture of some kind of sconce,
It's
if you
even
will.
glowing.
And you can see the outline of it, and where it connects to the wall, you can see the whole outline there. And when we took the picture and then looked at it and then looked at the wall, it was not there on the wall.
Nope.
That literally appeared on the photograph, and that is like one of the best. I mean, it's old, it's 2003, but
That
still,
was a good catch.
that was a good catch. I mean, it was just so
Yeah.
spontaneous. And I remember at the time, I don't even know why I took the picture. It was just kind of like, something tells me take a picture of that right there. And it was just
I
like
was just
click.
gonna say, I want to say we both kind of looked at each other and go like, "What's up over there?" Yeah, and it
Yeah, it
was
was like something's over here, click. And that's how we did it back then. That's how
it
we did
is.
it. In fact, maybe one of the meters went off. I don't remember. But something told us to, take a shot of that and see what you get. And we, in fact, got something. And, especially back then, you did not get the phenomena that you get today.
Oh
We
no,
didn't have the, the really delicate digital equipment that we have today. I mean, they might have just been coming out with digital back then. I don't even remember, but I know the original picture of that was film
Well,
I was
yeah. Well, the
I was
original
old
picture
school.
I
I shot with
watched.
film, and I had a film camera with me, and the night shot video that I had was not digital. That was that original high 8 magnetic tape.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there was nothing digital about it. It was analog. It was analog
yeah. I was gonna say you're
videotape,
an analog
and
girl. Yeah.
you know,
Well,
so
yeah,
it was just, and it was one of the first of its kind that had the night shot, and you even
right.
had that green look to it, and you had like the little square where you had the pic where the light would come through it and everything, and that's what we had, and that's what we rolled with, but. The phenomena that we got in that building was amazing in comparison to some of the other places. I mean, just, over and over again, walking into a room and just, getting all of this stuff to feel, to see, to hear, and then to actually capture it on photograph or video. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just something that doesn't happen every day. And to a lot of people that watch just the television shows and they think, oh yeah, you go out and you go into an investigation and this has happened and this has happened. For the kind of things that we had happening on this investigation, it was rare, because what you see on the television shows, that's could be days or even weeks of them filming in one location to get one little thing, if anything. I
were
mean,
we in
if
there what, 2, 3 hours at max? We weren't in there that long.
no, we were not in there that long. We didn't have a whole lot of time. I mean, we were zipping through it because it's a big place. It was a
It
huge
is a big
place.
place, yeah. Well,
And
it
we
was.
we were zipping through it, but I mean the things that we got were just amazing. And you see, that's the key when you're doing an investigation. That is the key. I have always believed, especially now. I mean, if you're gonna get something, you're gonna get something the minute you walk in that door. You're
Right.
gonna get some in that first, in those first few minutes. That's when it's there. That's when you're gonna get it. That was the whole point of opening that door, and you fling the door open and you hit it with the cameras because there it is. And
Right.
you're either going to get it right away, because if you can sit there 8 hours, you can sit there all night, and if you're not getting anything, you're not going to get anything. It's not going to just materialize. So I mean, that was the best way to get it, and just we were very renegade about it. Just boom, here we are, boom, open the door, hit it with a camera.
And yeah, it was cool. Well, you and I have worked together more than once, and I've often thought I always think you're the medium and I'm the Kenwood amplifier because we do work well together.
Yes, we do.
And we do tend to get, I think, some great result. And you are the only person to this day who has gotten me into a canoe on a bayou at like 4:30 in the morning.
Yes.
Where was it? Out to Frenier that day, right?
That was out to Frenier. Yeah, that was the haunted bayou. That was out there to go into the haunted bayou. But wasn't that the night that we were looking for the Rougarou out there? We were out there looking for the.
I have the pleasure of living with a Floridian. He calls it a skunk ape.
Well, okay, all right, yeah, they do. They call it a skunk ape. But you know what? In his defense, I gotta say, I wrote a book on Miami,
Oh, great place.
Miami's Dark Tales, and I wrote about not just ghosts, but some very strange things, because there's some strange stuff in Miami. After Katrina, I spent a lot of time there, and I did a lot of investigations. And one of the things I investigated was their version of the swamp monster, which they call a skunk ape. And interestingly enough, there's a breed of apes that actually live in the Everglades.
I think I dated a couple when I lived in Orlando.
Of course you did. Why wouldn't you? But no, there's actually documentation. They call them NAPEs, okay, North American primates. And it's a breed of, I don't know if they're I think they're large chimpanzees that
Oh
were
wow,
brought
that's
to the
cool.
United States many, many years before. I mean, you used to have roadside shows in Florida, especially those swamp roads. You had roadside circuses, roadside shows with animals. I mean, we used to have that here. You'd be driving, it's like, see the tiger, and you go in there and we had the snake farm just right around the block from where I live. You had all of these roadside places where they would have these animals. And in Florida, those animals get loose. They're going to go up into
They're going to
the
populate.
Everglades. They're going to populate. And from what I understand, at some point in time, there was like a shipload of these apes from certain areas of Africa that were brought into Florida, got loose, wound up in the Everglades. And what makes them different, what makes them very, very different, is that unlike your normal chimpanzee, which doesn't like water, these will swim. And I think that a lot of your tales of the skunk ape are actually these apes that live in the Everglades.
Well, something else to consider, and this is no disrespect to the fine state of Florida, which has housed me and has provided me with a delightful companion in life. However, you know, the most UFO sightings have got to be outside of like Roswell into Florida. There's always somebody in Florida.
South
And
Florida.
the other thing about Florida is, they've got these cryptids and they've got all these crazies. Everything loony happens in Florida.
Right, except the ones that are here. And that's what you were going after in those boats. But here, we have what they call the swamp monster.
Boogaroo.
Some people call it the Rougarou. To some people, the Rougarou is a werewolf. To others, to the Choctaw, the Rougarou was actually more of a Bigfoot kind of creature
Right.
that was in the swamps. And we were going out to look for one because there was one sighting recently, right before you got there. I was doing a tour out there, and we actually saw something in that bayou. And I was in a boat with a bunch of, believe it or not, Girl Scouts. And the girls were shining the lights on the bayou and everything. And they saw something moving across the bayou. I'll say moving. It wasn't really swimming. It was moving. And it just looked like the head of something. It was furry. There was a head. There was no neck. And they hit it with the light. It was a little bit further up. I don't know how many feet. I can't tell. And the captain of the boat asked me, he says, "What is that?" And I said, "You don't know?" I don't know. You're out here all the time. And, we discussed it afterwards because, the girls kind of turn the light off, and when they turn it back on, whatever it was gone, of course, typical.
Of course, yeah.
And that's what we were going in search of that night because we'd spotted it. And when I talked to the captain of the ship afterwards, he says, it was really strange about whatever it was we saw. Because I said, well, maybe it was a bobcat because it kind of had that light colored fur. And I said, well, it might have been a bobcat, swimming across. And he says, no, he says, the weird thing about that thing was it had no wake. And of course,
wow.
I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. And he says, no, you don't understand. He says, if it's swimming, it'll have a wake. He said it had no wake. Whatever it was had to be 9 feet tall because it was walking along the bottom of the bayou.
Right, yeah.
So that's what we were in search of. So Rocky comes down and we drag her out into January, into the cold bayou in a metal boat, pirogue, if you will, flat bottom boat, and dragged her out into the bayou to look for this thing that I had seen a few weeks earlier. And unfortunately, we didn't see it again.
No.
And
which is actually kind of good because I got to tell you, you could stick me in a closet in the State Theater with a shadow person, and I would be a lot less apprehensive than in an MRFing metal boat in a bayou. And then you've got, your associates telling me things like, be careful with that oar because when you go down, you're going to hit the alligators on the nose and they're going to come up and snap. I am from Rhode Island. I can clean a codfish in 5 minutes, but I don't know nothing about nutria and alligators and stuff like that. Like the worst thing that happens to me if I blindly run into the water is I might get hit by a rock crab. Oh my, you certainly have some treacherous nasties in there.
We do. But it was fun.
Huh?
It was fun. We've had some fun. We've had some fun adventures.
I love it.
But right now, I mean, you're doing some pretty fun adventures yourself right now because I'd like you to kind of explain to people because I know everybody's noticing this beautiful jewelry that you have around your neck and on your hat, and you do something very, very unique with that. Now, why don't you
Yes, I
give
do.
everybody a little rundown on what that is?
The jewelry is from Darker Arts Studio, and the website's www.darkerartsstudio.com. I am the artist. These are real human bones. They are ethically sourced. There's some FAQ on the website, even if you're just curious, like what kind of crazy woman makes jewelry out of human bones. I think bones are beautiful. One of the things I love about bones is we all have the same skeleton. Our outsides are varied, our intellects are varied, our personalities are varied. Our skeletons is what we have all in common. And the necklace has red jade. That's actually red jade,
Wow.
as well as the hat band, custom jewelry, and also on that page is the front porch tarot, which is here in Mulligan Hill, New Jersey. And also, I do video readings too. So if you live in Louisiana, Tennessee, or Georgia, I am so sorry. I am not able to ship you human bones. If you have a cousin in Biloxi, we can talk. But outside of that, the jewelry is and the tarot readings are a lot of fun. If you can find both on that website, and there's pieces ready to ship. There's custom orders. There's all kinds of stuff.
If you're into wearing bones, guys, this is the lady you want to see. So
no bones about it.
Oh, Rocky, this has been so much fun. It's so great to finally see you. We haven't seen each other in so many years. Everybody going in different directions and everything. So, but are you doing any investigations right now? Any new investigations going on?
Actually, I have some dear friends that I am not affiliated with any one group, but I do have some friends, the South Jersey Soul Searchers. Shout out to the South Jersey Soul Searchers. Don't try to say that 10 times fast. And we went to an old mill in Chester, PA, and
Nice.
the footage is still coming. But lots of people had some interesting experience. People hearing whispers in their ear. I've been out there. It's an old mill, not unlike the area where I'm from, Fall River, or, in that area with all the old mills. And they converted it into a place where musicians practice.
Oh,
It's all
nice.
practices for different bands. On any given night, you can hear several bands practicing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of a lot of fun to hang out there. But the mill
Cool.
itself is from 1856, and it has a very, very nice residual vibe. You can
Nice.
sometimes see the mill workers. It's
wow.
very, very residual, non-threatening. It's not the kind of thing that scares anybody. But when you tune in, it's really neat because you're really seeing a slice of the past. So we went out there with some cameras, and the evidence is still forthcoming because there was a lot of video evidence. We were out there for
Cool.
several hours.
Well, good.
So
we
we'll
have
see
something to
how-
look forward to. Those of you in New Jersey, and I'll go check out some of these places she's talking about. Well, Rocky, it's been such a pleasure to see you as always. Thank you so much.
Always great to see you.
We're going to call this a wrap, and hopefully we'll get to see you real soon when you guys come down to New Orleans again.
We can't wait.
New Orleans is open. New Orleans is back open after COVID. So, come on down. And want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed our scary story of the evening and us reminiscing about this particularly scary place that I wish was still there that we could go into, but we can't. But at least we have the pictures to prove that we had been there once. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hope to see you again soon for another episode of Scary Stories with Kalila. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.